Welcome to What's Next? Conversations with Boomers. I'm Barb Desmarais, your host. Today we have a really special episode. It's another healing one. Our last podcast was about self-love, and I would say that this is kind of in the same category. So I'm going to tell a bit of a personal story. I have realized over the last year that I have a lot of stored trauma. I have been doing yoga for over 30 years, but in my research around dealing with trauma and anxiety, I learned about the vagus nerve. And I think, a lot of people seem to be on this train right now. And through that, I learned about somatic healing. And I looked up on YouTube if there was any classes on somatic yoga. And one of the people that I was introduced to, that I found in my search, was Yoga with Annie. And I thought, why don't we see if we can have Annie on the show? So, Annie, thank you so much. Welcome to the show. This is just a treat.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
I am in Vancouver, and as regular listeners know, Mela is in Toronto. Annie is in Sri Lanka, and it's Wednesday there. It's still Tuesday here.
West Coast. Early morning here in Sri Lanka.
8:30 in the morning. Yeah, 8:30 in the morning. Yeah. Can you share with us how this all started with you? What is your story?
Absolutely. So I was born in Hong Kong and then moved to Canada at a very young age. Around 10 years old, I moved there with my family. We immigrated. And at a very young age, started in Hong Kong, I started dancing. So when I moved to Canada very early on, about pretty much around 11, 12 years old, I started professional ballet academy. So I was in very intense training at a very, very young age. And basically towards the end of my teenage years, like before I was 20, I was just physically broken. I trained hours and hours every day. And I was just like, I pulled both of my hamstrings for a very long time. I went on and became a professional contemporary dancer for another decade. So in my entire 20s, I was a professional dancer. And so basically early on in my life, I have already dealt with a lot of physical injuries. So I started yoga around, I was probably 17. And I like to say, like now I teach teacher trainings. I teach teacher to become yoga teachers. And I often introduce myself and I would say to my students, there's a difference between doing yoga and being yogic. And the first time I did yoga, where I just, rolled a mat out and did a downward facing dog, I was 17. I was at the university in Edmonton, Alberta. And all I wanted to do was just being flexible. I wanted to be stronger, more flexible. Everything was very physical. But the first time I kind of stepped on the mat for more of a spiritual purpose was after my first heartbreak. And I remember that was when I moved to Vancouver already. I was pursuing a dance career in Vancouver. I was about like in my mid-20s. And I remember just this heartbreak shattered my entire view of life. At a young age, I just thought, everything is paved out in front of me. And that just shattered my entire point of view of life. And I would go around different yoga studios in Vancouver and do yoga classes. And I can't remember what kind of yoga I did. I just remember I loved the sound of Om. I would go to these yoga classes and I would sit in the back. And when the teacher chant Om, I just cry. And it was the only time I felt belong and safe. And so I decided to hey, why don't I become a yoga teacher? Because at that point, I was not only physically broken, I was emotionally broken. So then I traveled to Thailand and I went on and did my yoga teacher training. But then you would think becoming a yoga teacher, then that's it. I would be happy. I have all these yogic tools, meditation to help me to be happy and heal. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen for another 10 years. I'm 40 now, so it's been a long time in my journey. So this somatic healing journey started for me because I started to realize in my yogic path that things weren't working the way that these ancient texts was promising. They promise, the if you sit and meditate and you do your breath work and you do your yoga poses, all is coming. It didn't for me, and I would cry and I would go on these long silent retreats. And I was a very quote unquote good yogi. Like I did all the practices. And then I learned about the science of nervous system. I learned about, if your body is not safe, if you perceive your world as unsafe, it doesn't matter what yoga you're doing. And then I started to infuse different somatic tools. And then I dove into what I currently teach now, which is yin yoga, these long held poses that allow space for me to integrate my experience, enough time for stored trauma in the body to come up. And then slowly and slowly, here I am. Yeah. Like, not that, like, healing is not a destination, it's like a long process. But not until now that I learn about, what we'll be talking about, the vagus nerve, the nervous system, in conjunction with the yogic tools, I think I would still be kind of in the whirlwind of it all, chasing the next spiritual tool to be happy. That's like really the goal of it all, like why I do what I do. And here I am.
It's all a journey, isn't it?
It is absolutely a journey, and I'm still on it. Like I have two very young babies, two under two. My daughter is just turned 2, and my son is 9 months. And they just started a whole different spiritual journey for me. And without the somatic tools, I think I would still be kind of in it all. Like I would still be overwhelmed and anxious. But these tools ground me in this part of my life now. Yeah, I'm in a very different part of my life right now.
Oh, wow. Nobody gets through this life unscathed, right?
Nobody does. And I'm always in awe of like, how did everyone make it?
Right. Yeah, somehow we do make it. Okay, so let's explain what the vagus nerve is and what a crucial role it plays in our body.
Absolutely. So vagus nerve has gotten quite a bit of spotlight these days. And I think more and more people are really aware of about healing. And it plays a huge role in our somatic healing, and which we'll talk about later what somatic really is. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve, which means it starts from the brain down to the body. And it starts at the brain stem, which is at the base of our skull. And it connects to many, many organs, including your eyes, throat, mouth, ears, digestive organs, heart, and lungs. And what the vagus nerve really is a communication highway. So think about it's like these huge highways with a lot of neurons and nerve endings, and it communicates between the body and the mind. Now, the most interesting thing about the vagus nerve is that most of the nerve fibers send information from the body to the brain. That means bottom up. 80% of those highways send information from the body to the brain, and only 20% send information from the brain back to the body. Now, this is very, very important because that means the information that we receive from not only from our organs, but also through the external world is mostly from bottom up. We actually receive most of our information about who we are, what we're doing. Are we safe? Yeah, this is the most important question that the nervous system is always asking. Are we safe? Is through the body to the brain. And then only 20% of that information comes from brain to body. So the vagus nerve plays a huge role in stimulating and activating the rest and digest nervous system. Now, translating that into healing is that, there are so many different types of healing in history. Most of it is talk therapy. Most of it, or like we talk to a friend. Let's say it's not clinical. Let's say it's just we talk to a friend, we want to journal, we do affirmations. But these are all the tools that are from top down. Yeah, we're cognitively thinking. We want to verbalize. We're communicating. These are the tools that are from top down. But what we now find about the vagus nerve is that we actually need to feel safe in the body first. We need to give our body the tools, the information and knowledge to go, hey, you are safe enough. And that information was sent from the body to the brain. Does that make sense?
And I'm just learning that myself. It's so interesting.
And that's why the vagus nerve is so important in helping us connecting the body and the mind, because it's the biggest highway. And if we can send enough information to the body and say, hey, you're safe, yeah, the mind then starts to realize, oh, I am. Otherwise, in our mind, we can get stuck. Yeah, we can get stuck in our fight or flight or functional freeze or shutdown. Yeah, and then it's a closed loop system. Yeah, then the mind will start to send information back to the body and start creating all of these stress hormones. And then it's just a downward spiral from there.
Yeah, so interesting. Okay, so define somatic. Where does that come from? And because I've started practicing, I've been doing it, I don't know, 6 months now, although I've done years and years and years of yoga, but there are specific poses that I now associate with somatic healing. And so maybe you can explain what those are and what it actually does. But first of all, define what do we mean by somatic?
For sure. So essentially, somatic is where we communicate with the body through the body. So somatic in general, the soma is our body, mind, and spirit, right? Everything is connected. In our entire wholeness, in our aliveness, we need the integration of our body, of how the thoughts go through our mind, and then our spirit. Like, how are we? Are we safe? Do we belong? Do we feel worthy of who we are? Yeah, that really makes up what we call the aliveness, the wholeness of us. And somatic really is that in somatic yoga, per se, we're actually offering the tools first to communicate with the nervous system, which is embedded in the body, to tell the body that you are safe enough. We're not focusing in how flexible we are. We're not focusing on the spirituality of yoga, even. We're not thinking about, are we talking to a higher self? None of that. We go back to the roots of it, which is, are you safe or do you feel safe enough in this very moment? Yeah. Like somatic on this term means just working with the body. And then when we combine somatic with yoga, is we're offering the yogic tools so that we can communicate with the nervous system. And really is to tell the nervous system that you are safe enough in your current environment.
Wow. And that in turn then calms your mind?
It's a communication, right? So let's say if my body doesn't feel safe enough, remember the vagus nerve is connected to all these organs, right? In your gut, in the heart, in your lungs. The vagus nerve will start to send the information back to the mind. So your heart rate may be a little bit higher. You might shorten your breath. Yeah, you might contract in your gut, in your stomach. Yeah, and we all felt that, right? When we feel fear or anxious, our body, our organs, our somatics, our sensations come right online. It's feeding us all that information, right? And then essentially, it's a communication both ways, right? The mind will start to perceive that you are in survival mode. Hey, I don't feel safe enough. So I'm going to send signals to create two hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. These are your two biggest stress hormones. So when these stress hormones are pumping in the body, yeah, you start to move into your fight or flight. You start to move into your survival mode. And then it's a communication together. Then the vagus nerve will be like, wow, okay, I'm sending all of these stress signals. I'm going to start connecting to all my organs and telling it to prepare for fight or flight. And then it sends information back to the mind that, hey, you are in a fight or flight situation. Do you see how this communication tool is just go round and around and around until we come into a resolution, until we complete what's called the stress response cycle? Yeah.
You want to engage your parasympathetic nervous system, right?
you want to get that online. You want to stimulate it to go, hey, wait a second, you're not in fight or flight. And we have to be realistic, right? Like if you are in a dangerous situation, you should be in fight or flight. Okay, let's just be really clear about that. Having a regulated nervous system doesn't mean we're calm all the time, right? If I'm in Sri Lanka, like people drive crazy here, right? If I'm driving and there's cars coming at me, I should move into survival mode, right? But what a regulated nervous system means is my ability to come back into quote unquote regulation. That means I can resume calmness, steadiness of my breath, homeostasis. My heartbeat isn't racing as fast when I do return to a calm situation, when I return to safety. Yeah. But what a dysregulated nervous system could mean is that we're stuck. Even when we do return to a safe enough situation, I'm still stuck in fight or flight. And that's what it means, dysregulated. And sometimes it's not just fight or flight. It can be functional freeze, shut down, yeah, where I should be preparing for fight or flight and I don't. And I diminish myself. I go vacant. Yeah, I dissociate. And that's another type of survival response. So what we really want is when we are stuck in the survival situation, our nervous system is stuck in dysregulation. We need something to help us to come back into homeostasis. We need something to come back into, hey, you are safe enough. And that's what somatic yin yoga comes into play.
Well, I will say that it's very effective. I mean, I've been doing it for quite a while, and I understand that these things, you don't feel better overnight. It's a long process. And once I realized that I had a lot of trauma inside, I thought, okay, this is going to take a while, but it just takes patience and consistency.
If you allow me, I just want to quickly address what trauma is. And then I'm
Yes,
gonna,
please.
because I think even for myself, before I embark on my healing and learned about the nervous system and somatics, I used to think trauma needs to be something big, right? Something terrible happened to me. And
Or you were in war or something.
yeah, right. And what trauma is anything that happened too fast, too soon, too much, or could have happened, or should have happened and didn't happen, right? So essentially, trauma is not the event itself, but what happened inside of it because of the event. So two people can go through the exact same incident. It can be a breakup or a transition of life, or it can be something we don't even think that it could be traumatic. It would just be an experience. But if that changed something in you, it impacted something inside of you because it happened too much, too soon, too fast, should have happened and didn't. So what that means, it could be you needed comforting, you needed someone to console you or just hold your hand or sit with you in silence. And that didn't happen. That for that particular person, that can become traumatic, right? So for anyone who is listening, never underestimate the experiences that you had and don't brush it away that goes, oh, that was nothing. Like whatever that happened to me, that was nothing. But if it had impacted you one way or another and is lingering in the body, that's a trauma for you. Right.
Mhm.
And I think, like we said earlier, like no one really get out of life unscathed. Really. And
No.
that's why I think the somatic yin has been so impactful and transformative for so many because we don't even know that we have stored trauma. We don't even know that we've been holding on to life and life experiences. And these poses and tools that I teach they seem so like easy, like quote unquote easy. They seem like I'm not even doing anything, but yet they're so powerful.
Very.
Because we're working with what I call formless. Yeah, when I teach my training is like, we have form, which is so tangible. We can do these pretzel poses, but we're dealing with the formless. We're dealing with memories, experiences, and the nervous system. We can feel it, but we can't touch it. We can't see it. And then the tools that we need to apply and help us are also subtle, but yet powerful. Okay, so coming to what I actually teach.
Yeah.
So really, in yin yoga, our long held, more or less passive way of holding poses. Yeah, these are long holds. And we use two main ingredients in yin: gravity and time. Yeah, gravity and time. And gravity can be your body weight and, of course, the gravity. And time, anywhere between, I would say, 1 minute to 5. Yeah. And we combine it with different somatic tools. Now, the somatic tools can come from different paradigms. They can come from neuroscience, yeah, which is we can use different eye movement, tapping, sound to activate the vagus nerve. Yeah. It can be from what I teach from the Taoist paradigm. It can be meridians tapping, acupressure, qigong. It can also be from the yogi paradigm, meditation, pranayama, which is breath work, chanting. And the more that we do these tools from these three paradigms, we start to realize that they have huge crossovers, which is communicating with the body through the body, communicating with the body through the body. Now, it seems like there's so much autonomy in the way that I teach classes. Like, you can do this, or you can do that. Like, oh wow, there's this like I have so much freedom. And that actually is the goal. The objective of somatic yin is to restore safety to the body, right? It's not about flexibility. It's not about, not even about meditation or calming the mind. It's really about, hey, let's talk to the nervous system. Let's restore safety. And how do we do that? Is that firstly, these tools on its own will activate eventually. Like you say, it's not overnight. Eventually, it would start to communicate and start to tune to the vagus nerve. And then the vagus nerve would talk to the mind. And then the autonomy part is what the healing is, that you have choices in not just your practice, in your life, you have choices. And so when you go into the pose, the idea is to start developing what's called introspection. Observe your own body sensations and feelings and notice, what do you need right now? Yeah. Do I need to lay on my back? Do I need to lay on my side? Or do I need, or when you're in the posture, does the body invite me to deepen? And all of that, a teacher on the external can never tell you. I can never tell, hey, Barb, go deeper into your caterpillar. I don't know what's happening inside of you. Only you would know, right? But what I could do is I can hold space for you, right? And that's what I do in the class, is that here's a container. There are these poses and different exercises, and they're just a container for you to communicate with your own nervous system. And that's why I give a lot of choices, but not so much that you felt like you're floating out in the sea without anyone, right? What we call in somatic, in healing, is a co-regulator. I'm your co-regulator. I'm going to be as calm as I can while I'm teaching. So you can mirror me if you need. Yeah. And then you can safely go into your body and choose what works for you this moment. Yeah. And eventually that becomes a training wheel in real life, right? When you're out having the hard conversations, right? You start noticing, oh, my body, I'm feeling anxious now. Instead of responding or being sucked into the vortex of anxiety, you go, hey, I can do these breathing exercises and I can choose right now. I can choose to pause. I can choose to, walk away. I can choose to choose the words that I need. And that's why there's so much space for autonomy.
It's so welcoming as a student that you don't feel pressured to accomplish anything beyond what you're comfortable with. One of the poses, I mean, there's some that that are repeated a lot, and one of them is when you put your knees on to your chest, and then you're invited to go side to side. What does that actually do? What is the benefit of that?
Essentially, when we draw the knees to our chest and rolling side by side, there are multiple dimensions there. Well, firstly, the self-hugging motion is really nurturing. And that's part of self-touch, where we give ourselves what we need. Yeah, the safety and the groundiness that we need, right? We're also massaging the spine where the nervous system runs through. And also we're offering micro movement in a practice that's usually very still. So yin yoga is very interesting because for those who don't practice yin, they might say, oh, that's too easy. I'm just laying around and I'm doing nothing, right? Exactly. You're shaking your head. But really, the biggest challenge for most, and I've been teaching yin exclusively for 13 years, is sitting still with the mind and confronting all these body sensations and flashbacks and memories and emotions, right? And offering micro movement in the class is a bit of a relief for the mind. It's also a moment for integration, for letting the nervous system to just, "Ah, okay," and then preparing for the next long holds. Yeah. So it does play in multiple ways why we do it.
The swaying feels really good. When you're lying on your mat, hugging your knees, and then you're invited to sway from side to side. Now, what about the neck? So very often, you're invited to reach your the right side of your head to your shoulder and then hold it there and then do the other side. And I'm assuming because that comes in contact with the vagus nerve in the neck. So tell us more about that.
For sure. Essentially, yes, all the neck movement that we do, not all, but like most of the time, is because we want to stimulate the vagus nerve. And you can think about all the neck movement along with eye movement as well.
Yes.
Eye movement, yeah, because the eye movement also is heavily innervated with the nerve, the vagus nerve. So when we're introducing these gentle neck rolls, maybe like a side neck stretch with massage, and I often add an acupressure point because I'm combining different paradigms, right? The neuroscience, which is the activating the vagus nerve, along with the acupressure. It all plays in stimulating the rest and digest nervous system.
That's why I really love your classes, Annie, because I can tell you've been trained in a lot of things, and it does offer a little bit more than just the poses. And the poses obviously are important and they're a huge part of it. The tapping, you also do some tapping, the tapping up and down the arm. So what does the tapping do?
So the tapping, actually, what we do it to dissipate what's called the sympathetic energy. So sympathetic often is being associated with fight or flight, which sounds like it's a negative thing. Oh, I'm in fight or flight. I need to dissipate this. But what sympathetic energy really is mobilization, right? When we're really active and alert, playful, moving a lot. We've just been busy in the day. It doesn't have to be fight or flight. There's a lot of sympathetic energy. And usually that sympathetic energy runs in the central axis, in the torso, in the throat, in the mind, in all of that, right? When we feel very overwhelmed, we might feel a lot in the heart. Yeah. When we feel like nervous and scared, these are mobilization energy. We might feel constriction in the throat or just being busy. There's a lot of mind and thoughts going in the mind, in the head, sorry. So when we start tapping, we actually start dissipating that. We start sending all this energy that's been kind of stuck in the central axis to the limbs and out. And when you do the tapping along with vocals, that's even better, I think, because it's you're just letting things out and then just letting it move. Yeah. So in Chinese medicine, in meridian theory, we say that's stagnated qi, right? You want to start
Stagnated chi.
yeah, like stagnated energy. Energy is being stuck in one area. So when we do some vocals, we do some tapping, we start shaking, it just start to flow. Yeah, we're mobilizing the chi, the energy to flow. And you might feel like, oh, okay, it's great. Like maybe for you, you've been very busy. Yeah. So right before bed, there's still a lot of pent up energy and you just want to tap it out, let it out, and go straight to bed. Yeah. But for others, it can be just a bit more awakening. So people who are in shutdown or functional freeze, they kind of dissociate or burnout. The tapping actually helps you awaken them. Yeah. So it serves for different states of nervous system, depending on where you're at.
Talk about humming. and why it's so effective. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's the vagus nerve, right? Okay. Fun fact. So one of my YouTube subscribers commented and said, vagus nerve sounds like my nerve is in Las Vegas. And when the subscriber said, I would never unsee that. And I will always think about my nerve is having fun in Vegas. I thought that was so brilliant. But essentially, the vagus nerve can be stimulated through so many different ways. And because it does connect, it's a cranial nerve, right? So it descends through the neck, innervates through the face, down to the torso. Vocals, yeah, it doesn't have to be like a yogic hum. It can just be, screaming out into the ocean, right? Or singing or anything. Yeah, just utilize your vocal cords can start to vibrate the vagus nerve and start to tune it, get it more toned, and communicate better with the body and the mind. And that's why humming is so lovely in our somatic toolbox. And interestingly, we in the yoga paradigms, we do mantra, we chant, we do the sound of Om. Yeah. And then in Qigong, we have the sound of the organs. These ancient practices has been somatic practices for thousands of years. It's just now that science have a language for it. We call it somatic tools. But yoga and the Taoist practices have always been somatic.
Well, that's what I'm realizing now because, as I say, I probably started doing yoga 35 years ago. So for people listening and don't know what we're talking about, what we're talking about, would you mind giving a little demonstration of what we mean? And you don't, as you say, you don't necessarily have to say but
so essentially, like we also have to honor that in addition to the yoga tools as a somatic, a lot of it is also about spiritual connection, about connecting our mind. It's a conversation to the higher self or the divine self. We cannot neglect that yoga is actually a spiritual practice, right? So yes, the sound of Om, which is made of 3 sound and a silence that follow, is Al U Om. Om. And then followed by a silence. In the spiritual context, yeah, which we take the somatic out for a moment, the sound Ah represents what called the god of creation, Brahma. And then the U is what called Vishnu, the god of purveyor, the god that sustained this material world. And then is the sound of the destroyer, yeah, the Shakti. And it's beautiful in this way because then the sound of Om followed by the silence is continued by another sound of Om, right? So it represents that this whole material world that we're living in is a constant creation, sustaining, and then like a destroyer, right? It is like a whole cycle of life. And that is a spiritual explanation of the sound of Om. Yeah. But interestingly, because we chant it and we activate the vocal cords, when we layer on the neuroscience of it, we go, hey, we are also stimulating the vagus nerve. Yeah. So if you read the yogic text, there's not a single mention of the vagus nerve, right?
No, exactly.
None whatsoever, because there's no technology, there's no science behind it just yet. The yogis don't know that, but they know the effect of it. They know the effect of chanting. They know the effect that, hey, when you lay down on your back and you do what we call yoga nidra, which I teach in my training, you go deeper into relaxation. But then now we have the language of that, hey, we feel supported in the ground. We're moving our brain waves when we're in nidra. We're shifting out of what's called beta, which is alertness and problem solving. We go more into this alpha and the theta. The science coming later, but the yogis have been doing it for thousands of years. Now we just have a way of explaining. Yeah. I can go on and on. So tell me if I'm going off track.
I absolutely love this stuff. Well, I'm just so happy that I discovered it. And I always look forward to practicing at the end of the day. And it really has helped me. I just had a whole series of things happened probably in the last 20 years. And I've realized I have stored trauma and it was really starting to affect my digestive system. And I thought, I really need this. And your little practices, I mean, who hasn't got 15 minutes, right? Little moments of self care that just are so effective.
And it's a good reminder that we don't need long practices to attune to our nervous system, right? We just need 10 minutes to like, okay, this is a conversation with my nervous system. I can come in, I can regulate myself. And these little practices are meant to create a habit.
Yeah. And when things, you don't think that you have to put aside an hour for something really strenuous, we're putting aside 10 or 15 minutes for something very calming, healing, and easy to do. We just have to have the discipline to continue doing it and to understand the incredible benefit that it has to your whole system. So, is there more that you'd like to share with us about somatic healing, somatic yoga, tapping, humming?
I think what I really want to share with anyone who's listening is that the tools can look very different for everyone. Yeah, for one person, their healing journey can be, hiking and climbing the highest mountain in the world, right? It can be, traveling the world. It can be doing strenuous yoga or somatic yin yoga. Like somatic yin is just one of the many, many tools that one can use to help them regulate their nervous system. I mean, from my own healing journey is that as long as you can feel safe in your body. Yeah. And yoga is everywhere, right? It doesn't have to be, stretching on the yoga mat. It can be a conversation with your loved ones. It can be, mundane things, washing your dishes. It can just in yoga. But your practice need to make you happier. And I say this to all my students is that if your practice is not serving you, if you're doing your yoga practice, right, and you don't feel safe in your body, you're not happy, right? It's time to change it. It can be just changing the way you approach it, right? Or changing it altogether, or just having a good look at what do I need? What does my body need that I can feel safe in it? Because once you feel safe in it, you feel light, you feel happy, right? And it's not that life get any easier. It doesn't. Life doesn't get any easier, but the way that we move through it is a lot easier. You can see lightness in many things when you have a regulated nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, it's so fascinating and so much more to learn about it. I mean, this is even new to me to even make reference to my nervous system because I've suffered, I hate to use that word suffer, but I've dealt with anxiety for a long, long time. And yeah, as I say, I've had a number of things, and a lot of them are relational that created trauma in my body. And and they're all signals, aren't they, Annie? They all teach us something, don't they?
I actually used to suffer bad anxiety attacks. And when I was living in Vancouver, I got hospitalized once. And
Oh
I
no.
went to the hospital. I couldn't breathe. And the doctor just observed me for 8 hours. They couldn't give me a diagnosis because it's in the nervous system. It's not like, oh, here is the cause, and let's remove that and you'll be fine. And actually that's what propelled me onto this healing journey. Is like, you know, why? Like, how come doctors can't explain to me what's happening to me? But now I know it's not like, oh, now Annie is the somatic yin teacher. She will never be anxious. I'm anxious all the time. But I have the tools now to go, okay, if I encounter situations where I feel anxious about, I have the tools to come back into my body. And the anxiety, actually, like you say, is a signal, is my body trying to tell me that, oh, I'm feeling unsafe right now. And how can you help me? And it's a constant conversation. And also, is a form of self-love. It's a form of self-love where like, what can I offer my body right now so that I can love myself more? Right?
Mhm.
We all deserve that.
We all deserve it. Yeah. Oh, Annie, this is so interesting. I'm just so honored that you were willing to come on and share all of this. I know we're going to get where there'll be lots of downloads, there'll be lots of listeners. So, how can people reach you?
You can reach me through my website, anyowyoga.com. You can also find me on Instagram, which I believe the link will be shared. And essentially, my Instagram is filled with different tools and offering free for anyone to try out these little short somatic tools. And also email me, hello@anyowyoga.com.
And I'm going to share also that I've said that I have taken many, many classes with Annie and have not paid a cent. They're all free.
Absolutely. Free ebooks, free classes, free podcast, everything. Yeah. And I'm here to help.
It's such a great service, really. Annie, a huge thank you to you for coming on. Here, there you are in Sri Lanka. I know that this is going to be listened to by many, many, many people. Yeah, it's such a valuable resource. So thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so glad you reached out. And it always excites me to talk about healing and talking about how I can serve more people. And this has been a very exciting conversation at the start of my day. Thank you so much.